Turn on your webcam. We would love to see your faces. If you have your children with you, we would love to see them as well. Well, welcome to Homecoming at Home. My name is Kimberly White and I work in the Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you so much for joining us for this special Loma Talk, part of the lifelong learning opportunities that we have. We are excited to be partnering with PLNU's Early Childhood Learning Center, a laboratory preschool which focuses on faith development. Whether you're an educator, an aspiring educator, a parent, a grandparent, or simply someone who loves children and also their faith, we really hope that you enjoy this time together. Before we begin the presentation and conversation, I would first like to invite you to utilize the chat box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. Please type in there and let us know where you're tuning in from and how you're involved with or affiliated to PLNU. I also wanted to let you know that the best way to view the presentation is through the speaker view, which you can find by clicking the button at the right-hand corner of your screen. This session is also going to be recorded and we will make it available for further viewing on the Homecoming website. So as we are saying hello, I also wanted to introduce you to the lovely and brilliant Susan Rogers. Susan serves as PLNU's co-chair of the Department of Sociology, Social Work, and Family Sciences. And she is also the academic director of the Early Childhood Learning Center. She is an alumna of PLNU with a BA in Child Development and an MA in Teaching and Learning. And she is currently pursuing her EDD in Curriculum and Learning from North Central University. Susan is a busy woman. Susan often speaks all throughout California about planting healthy seeds of faith in children. She also conducts research in sensory integration, working with children with visual and auditory processing disorders. And she co-leads some of my most favorite memories of PLNU events, such as the Down Syndrome Easter egg hunt and the Special Olympics that is hosted on campus each year. Susan met her husband, John, at PLNU, and they've now been married for 37 years. And together they have 2 children who both attended PLNU as well. Would you please join me in welcoming Susan?
Hello, I am thrilled to be here. Obviously love Point Loma, and the mission of Point Loma is very, very important. And we have a lab school on campus, and there are many lab schools all throughout the United States, but there are very few that are Christ-centered. And so that makes our place, I think, very, very special. So a lot of my research has been focusing on faith development. And how do we plant those healthy seeds of faith? So, but before we start, I want you to each take a moment with me and let's reflect on your own foundation, your very own foundation. So if you have a blank piece of paper, please get it out. And I want you just to reflect on the first words that come to your mind when I ask you some questions. So go back, I'll give you a minute to get some paper. I get excited and sometimes I just keep on talking. So think back to the very earliest memories that you have of God. So I want you to think of sights, sounds, smells, but whatever it is, what do you remember? It could be something someone said to you. It could be something you've overheard. What were your very first memories of God? So that foundation, your very first. So go back as far as that as you possibly can go. What were those first images of God? Who is God to you at that point? Who is he? So now go to maybe elementary school, and think, okay, in elementary school, who is he now? What are the things that are popping out? Is it a certain person? It could be a grandparent, it could be a parent, it could be a Sunday school teacher. What are they telling you? What are those images? What are those significant images when you look at elementary school? So things of sights, smells, anything that, any traditions, anything that is reinforced. What are those foundation pieces? Is there a significant person that is still the same? Now I'm going to ask you to do something a lot of us don't want to do, is go back to junior high. So think about junior high. What are those, and this in junior high, what are those pieces for you about God? Is anything changed? Anything the same? Anything more important than it used to be? High school, who is he? What's important now? Are there some patterns that are the same, or did things change? What's important? What are those, who is he? What are those significant memories? Okay, let's go to college. Here we go. Some of you, I know, I see some of my favorite students in audience right now, but who is he to you? So that 20-year-old mind, who is God? Are you doing anything different than you hadn't done before? Any patterns that are the same? Any people that are standing out? So who is he to you now? Who is he now? Now, some of us, we got to go back. We got to do a little bit more catching up, but we're gonna just go with that at this piece. Who is he to you right now? And as you reflect on this piece, look at those prior experiences. Are there any of those that impacted where you are now? So what we're going to do, so now look at it all and see, is there anything that surprised you about this? So what you're looking at is really your foundation, and that foundation, and whether it impacted or not. I remember when I first looked at this, I was really surprised by the influences of a grandmother that was repetitively told me who I was and who God was. And that piece was a foundational piece that hasn't left me. Is anybody comfortable sharing anything at this point? And if not, we totally get it. But anything they saw that was interesting, something that...
Susan, I saw that in my thing that my mother was a huge influence, and how throughout all my stages, she always reinforced what I was feeling. So
Oh, that's so nice.
thankful.
I know, and you think about it as Christian parents, that's one of the things we want to be able to give our children is this strong foundation. And so that consistent presence is really important. Very good. Anything else before we get in the heat of this good stuff?
Sandy. Yeah, I'm the same with you as my grandmother. Even to this day, she tells me, I pray for you every day. I think about you every day. And, you know, we would have to go to the church. She worked at the church. I was raised Catholic, and we would have to walk to the church, and when we had different, you know, offering of flowers, we would help decorate everything. We'd have to sit through the Latin mass, Spanish mass, English mass. She and my mom taught catechism, so we had to go sit through the high school classes of elementary kids and preschoolers, and you know, and then going to Point Loma to a Nazarene college, which was very different, but very eye-opening to me, you know, and it just she was always there. She was just glad I went to school with religion, and didn't matter that it was, you know, Nazarene, just the fact that, you know, God is still in my life. God is still there. And so, yeah, definitely grandma.
Yeah. Oh, see, what beautiful, beautiful gifts. Before I continue, I want to also introduce you to my partner, which is Emma Ossing. She is our site director. We've been blessed to have her with us for 9 years now as our site director of the Early Childhood Learning Center. And so at the end, she is going to help me with any of the questions that we have with practical application, and share a little bit about how we do it at the center, which is, I think, a neat component. So let's get into this this faith piece. Let's see. So we're going to look at the work of James Fowler and stages of faith development. So he is really fascinating. In fact, absolutely love studying James Fowler, because he as a child asked a question, and he made his work trying to figure out that question. So he was his dad was a Methodist minister in the South. So you're going to hear some Southern stuff in this, because his dad was, I don't know if anybody here lived in the South. We lived in Kentucky for a while, and oh my goodness, the big camps, the Christian camps during the summer, really, really popular. Well, James Fowler's dad, who was also James Fowler, Dr. James Fowler, he was one of the preachers in a very famous camp that people came from all over to go to the summer camp. Well, some of these people treated him, oh, I forgot to tell you, James Fowler, the son, was a custodian at the camp. Well, so some people treated him one way when they thought he was just a custodian, but it changed when they realized who his dad was. But then there was those other people that it didn't matter. They treated him the same regardless of what they knew. And that became the question that he kind of pondered. It's like, why are some people's faith so childlike, and others people, and they've all been churched all of their lives, other people's faith are so much at a higher level? And then that was what he did. So what he ended up doing was getting a PhD in theological ethics, and became a developmental psychologist. So his theory is looking at people's stories and trying to figure out their faith stories, and trying to figure out why some people's faith is up here and some people's faith not. And he came to the conclusion that there are two stumbling blocks developmentally in a lifetime. And those stumbling blocks sometimes can help us not get to the next stage. So think developmentally in lifespan. When do you think those 2 times are? When do you think? Any guesses? No guesses? Well, I and I are both here going to talk about early. So that early piece is very critical. And the other piece, anybody else? Point Loma grads? Anybody remember being a 20-year-old at Point Loma Nazarene University, taking a, for me, it was Old Testament, taking Old Testament and looking at it and going, wait, I've read the Bible all my life. And now I'm looking at it, it looks different because it's not my parent, it wasn't my parents' faith, but now it was my faith. So I had to critically look at it. And I was one of those blessed students that had, for my Bible teacher was Reuben Welch. And I would sit in his office for hours and he would say, oh, Susan, yes, let's look at this. And I would ask a question and ask a question, but it was, and I remember that conflict. And that's one of the things that he talks about, that actually that conflict is getting ready for the next stage. So, and so that's what we're going to look at is this faith. So Fowler views it as what he is developmental. It's a process that begins very early in life. And that piece is really pretty significant. So so what's neat about that, so let's do some background. We talked that he's a son of a Methodist minister, developmental psychologist, and PhD in theological ethics. I was determined to avoid the mistakes I had felt I had been a victim of in my own theological education. One was that I thought that I was taught theology as though I had never been a child. I had to ignore the fact that some very powerful images of God images of God and holy occurred before I was 5 years of age. The other mistake was I was taught theology as though my body began with my neck and went up, but I knew as a Southerner that I thought with my glands. So I love that. So this theory is, it changes. So those of you that are in education, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, ooh, I see some Kohlberg in here. I see some Piaget, and you're right. That's exactly what he did. And Erickson's in here, but it changes as the child changes. And so it's very developmental. He's going to utilize theories of Piaget, Erickson, and Kohlberg, and you're going to see that. And it's a pilgrimage. It can involve up to 6 stages. But the interesting thing that this research found is that most of the population never get to even 5 or 6. And we'll talk about that as well. So it'll be kind of fun as we look at this for you to also look at what you just did when you jotted down your own journey, your own pilgrimage. So let's start to look at the stages. So the first stage, you'll hear a lot of Erickson here. This first stage is, it's a pre-stage. It's before a child even can walk or talk. The child has learned or not, whether or not he can trust this world or not. So whether it's something that he can trust. So that's a huge piece of that. So before a child even can walk or talk. And so that piece, it's hard to trust that there's a loving God that loves you unconditionally if as a very young child you didn't feel that and the world didn't feel like a safe place. So that piece, really important. So one of my favorite ones is this intuitive projective faith. And it's when you look at the ages of this is the same as this is what Piaget would call the pre-operational child. So this is that 2 to 6 year old, takes everything absolutely literally. They don't understand metaphors. They take what we say literally. So let me give you an example of this intuitive projective faith child and how absolutely powerful that is. So I get very excited about stuff. And when I was learning about Fowler, one of the things that I did was I was just reading like a crazy woman and just loving it and getting super excited. And my husband, who I'd been married to for a long time at that point, looked at me and said, "What are you studying? What are you getting into?" And I started telling him, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense." And I said, "What?" And he said, well, when he was a little boy, he actually grew up in rural Ohio, and his dad was a Methodist minister. And he's what we call a bright child and very inquisitive, and was always finding things to get into. For example, he got into the Wayfarer, the little communion Wayfarer little crackers, and he decided to eat them. He announced to everybody he found Daddy's diet food. He also decided to baptize himself in the baptismal bowl. So that was real. So they decided they needed some help. So there was this sweet lady, a church lady, who said, "You know what? I'll make it my job to follow little Johnny around." And so literally, he's running around in these open fields, and he sees a shooting star. Now he says, "What is that?" And he asked her, and she said, and which we do when sometimes we talk in metaphors to children because it makes us feel better. But she said, "Johnny, every time you see a shooting star, it's an angel taking somebody to heaven." And he's like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Okay." So, and he was really young at that point. So he was probably maybe 5, maybe 6 at that age. So what we know is developmentally, that becomes his schema. That becomes how he's going to organize in his mind every time he sees a shooting star. So, and this is something they do internally. So that's what he did. He kept on saying, "Oh, look, there's, a shooting star. Oh, an angel's taking someone to heaven." Well, then he saw a meteor shower. And he thought, "I don't think I see that many people going to heaven tonight." But he didn't say anything about it. I mean, just thinking. And then he went to bed. He woke up and his mom had the news on, and 200 people had died in a plane crash. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, I saw it. I saw the angels taking them to heaven." And so then later, what was interesting is, we don't ask him when, but later in a science class, he realized that that wasn't true. So what he did, which is what Fowler says they do, is they look back and say, what else about God wasn't true? So that little sweet story that we tell children at the moment, we got to give them very strong foundations that they can hold on to, that are going to be consistent. And so that did rock his faith for a while, because he had to re-examine everything he had been told. So that's that 2 to 7-year-old child, very concrete, taking everything we say absolutely concrete. So that's what we'll talk about in a little bit, is how to plant those seeds. So now let's look at the next stage, which is this mythical, literal faith stage. This is when I told you to do elementary school. Look at that, see what you said. But this is almost looking as if God is a judge with a gavel, and he's saying, "Okay, you're being bad, so I'm going to make it rain over here, but you're being good." And but it's that piece, very it's almost very judgmental, with a what did I do type thing for this to happen. So that's that stage 2, mythical, literal faith stage. One of the things that Fowler says is that it does follow ages and stages, but an event in your life can make it go faster or slower. And this is interesting because we have a niece that was, she was 10 years old when she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. She was 11 when she died. And what was really absolutely fascinating and beautiful about that was to see the progression of her faith change. Even though she was only a year later, that piece was really significant. When she was diagnosed, she said to her mom, she said, "Mom," and at this point, she was having a hard time with vision. She was having a hard time she was just having getting a lot of headaches. Things were changing. And she said to her mom, "What's going on? What happened?" And she said to her, "Why is God so mad at me?" Now, which is exactly what we expect a 10-year-old child's mind to say. And her mom answered her beautifully and said, "Oh, honey, I don't know exactly. I mean, what I do know is that God loves us. And he's with us, and he is not going to leave us in this, and he's with us every step. And I know that he's with us," and which was a really good, hard answer. But what was interesting, when Bailey got very close to the end, her faith was all about everybody else and how they were going to be. And she knew that she was going to be with Jesus, but she was really worried about the big picture of everyone else, which isn't a typical mythical literal place. So that piece I was able to observe her faith really did change really quick and go to such a higher level. So that is the 10-year-old mind. Did anybody, so that mythical literal faith, did anybody put something on their paper that kind of shows that piece?
I did, Susan Kendall. I wrote that it was when I felt like I defined what good was and bad. And it was very much, was I going to be a good child or was I going to be a bad child? And I think I didn't start going to church until that age, about 10. And so I think it defined a lot of things for me in my life, for sure.
Yeah, really, it really is really fascinating. Okay, so the next stage is this synthetic conventional faith. So this is high school. So look at what you wrote in high school. And sometimes it happens in junior high or high school, but it's when it's a personal relationship. It's me and Jesus. It's my friend, and you know that he's with you. So it's that personal relationship usually starts around stage 3, and which usually, not always obviously, is going to be junior high and high school. So now let's think about that. Think about what's really important for faith development is going to be those relationships with other young adults, in high school, junior high, groups, that piece where we're really focusing on relationship with Christ, really, really important. So that is stage 3. Most of the population lives right there at stage 3. Never really goes to too much. And then there's this battle. So the battle is stage 4. This is that 20-year-old mind, where you're examining it as if you've never heard it before, and you're looking at it almost with a magnifying glass, and and boy, it has growing pains. I remember that feeling so much, and I remember when I went through my struggles. My brother, who's 3 years younger, he did it 3 years later. And he was not at a Christian university, and his professor told him that faith was for the weak, and those that are not smart. And honest to goodness, I watched his faith just stop. And it wasn't until he had children that he had to decide whether or not he was a believer anymore. So that piece, and especially from us that have been so privileged to be part of this amazing university that really is so faith driven, and that relationship is so important. I'm so grateful, and I think that and I'm sure I'm not the only one of that, but when we have faculty that will sit and listen to us and help us to figure that out, is really, really neat. Okay, so let's see what is going on here. Okay, so the next one is stage 5. Now, Fowler says this one is the hardest to explain. So if you can imagine, you are in this beautiful poppy seeds, field of poppy seeds. You're looking at it with a magnifying glass. Okay, so you're looking at the center. but at the same point, you're looking at it with a wide angle lens. So this is when God is the center. So you're pulling yourself away, but so this is when you're looking as God as the center, and then you get to see everybody else that's out there. And it's not all about you now. And that piece you have to go to stage 4 successfully to get to be able to get to this conjunctive faith, a time of soul searching, people's focus moving away from themselves and towards the center of God. And I'm sure we all know somebody that is right there, which is neat. And then of course, our top is the universalizing faith, which is the focus is on God. Abiding in God as if he is sitting right here next to me every moment. And I know that, and I see that. And I love this. In a sense, we can describe the stage in which persons begin to radically live as though the kingdom of God were already a fact. And oh my goodness, that's I think our mission of what we want to be. That and I know we all know someone that was like that, or that lives like that. And that, so if we look at how we present faith to children and we look at it from a developmental lens, the goal is that we can do this, that we can get more and more people to this. So only 2 to 4% of the people are there at this point, what Fowler believed. And that piece we can change. By introducing it in more developmental ways. So, and he quoted, so he, like Mother Teresa, Gandhi, those kinds of people that had a vision. Martin Luther King, they had a vision, and that is what they, didn't matter what anybody else thought. That is what they're doing and how they're living. And that piece is really significant. So let's focus on this wonderful mind of the intuitive projective faith child. So let's talk about that. This 2 to 7-year-old that we all may, well, hopefully we all love, but at the same point, they put you on, keep you on your feet because you have to be constantly thinking. So when you think about this, what do we know about the child, this age, this 2 to 7-year-old? So they're full of imagination. And boy, fantasy is a big deal. And so that is, really, really important, is that fantasy piece, that we want to make sure what we're saying is something that's pretty concrete and something that they can really hold on to. They're very egocentric, and it's not egocentric because they're spoiled. It's because that's they're constructing their own knowledge through their experience, and that's all they have. So that piece is important. So perception is given meaning through the use of emotion and imagination. Anybody that's worked with young children knows that is true. The images of God are very much like a young child at this age, very impulsive and primitive. I mean, very basic. And I love this piece because this, I think, is so true, especially when you think of my husband's story. It's when we become religiously pregnant. They want to hold on to something, but we've got to give them something concrete to hold on to. And it's striking how many times in our interviews and experiences that and images that occurred before a child was 6 years old had powerful, powerful, long-lasting effects on their development of faith. That piece, I think, is, and this obviously can be positive or negative. So I think that piece is really an important piece. So, so let's talk about what can we focus on? So it's really easy to say what not to do. And one of the things that I really get excited about this research because it changes in the last, any of you that have been teaching Sunday school for the last 10, even, well, 15, 10 years, you have seen in the curriculum, there's been changes, because what we used to tell young children, oh my goodness, I mean, it's all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, I remember I was doing the kindergarten and preschool summer, Bible camp, and the director handed me she handed me the curriculum and said, you might want to change this. It was all about death. It was all about death and how God's going to be there for everybody that dies. And I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding. There's so many beautiful things that we can focus on that's going to be concrete. So we did. We changed it. But when you look at curriculum now for Sunday school versus years ago, we're going in a positive way. So let's think about it. God made all things and he doesn't make mistakes. How do we touch? I mean, let's go look at what God made. I mean, he's the creator of heaven and earth. And that piece is a foundational piece. And oh boy, I love this. God made you and he doesn't make mistakes. He made you. He made you. And that piece is absolutely significant. At this stage, we also focus on the image of God. They want a concrete image. So how do we do that? And there's some books. One of the things that we have done very intentionally at the center is to look for books that are developmentally appropriate for this age. They're hard to find. And so one of the things, if you're interested, we can, there's a place that you can email at the center and we will send you a book list with these concepts. But so God made all things. God made you in the image of God. He's stronger than any of the problems. You think about images. So what were those images of God that you had? One of the ones, for me, and I bet you I'm probably not the only one, but was this idea, I used to sing Jesus Loves Me over and over again as a child. And that, you think about that image, Jesus loves you. Oh my goodness, that's a beautiful image. That doesn't change. That piece, really good foundation. He's got the whole world in his hands. I personally like that. I know some people may not, but that was an image that I had very early on, that he is in control of all things. And that's from my perspective, I really like that. But that image is really important. Unconditional love. Now we hope that every child is hearing about unconditional love from their parents, and that they get that and that they know what that is, and that unconditional love, really important. There's a book that I absolutely love. I think this is one of my very favorite children's books, and it's called I Love You This Much. And I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to read it. Pieces of it, I promise. How I love your morning hugs. You nestle in my touch. You wait to hear me whisper, I love you this much. I love you best. I love you most. I love you high. I love you low. I love you wide. I love you this much. Throughout the day.
Will you show us the pictures?
Am I not? Can you not see them?
No, you have the screen share on.
Oh, I'm showing you okay. You know what? Let me do that. Oh, I'm showing you guys. Let me do that. So when I hold it up, you can't see it. Okay. I will do the books in a minute. Okay. How's that? Is that okay? So unconditional love. I will, you know what? I think I can do this. Wait, I'm going to stop. All right, here you are. We're going to do it. All right. So hopefully I can do ninja like I tell our students to do ninja and do the screen break on. I love you this much. Oh, yeah, and I'll have to show you the Jesus Loves Me one too. How I love your morning hugs. You nestle in my touch. You wait to hear me whisper, I love you this much. I love you best. I love you most. I love you high. I love you low. I love you deep. I love you wide. I love you this much. Throughout the day, we hide and seek. I love to see you smile. I always say I found you, dear, but I had you all the while. We shout out for all to hear, I love you best, I love you most. I love you low, I love you high, I love you wide, I love you this much. I trust you know that God is so by what I say and do. I tell you he is safe and sure. And what he says is true. He holds you in his loving arms. You feel his tender touch. You hear the Heavenly Father say, I love you this much. When the day is done and setting sun, we bow our heads and pray. I trust you to God's loving care. You safely drift away. I kiss you on your sleepy head with one last gentle touch. The words still ringing in our ear, I love you this much. I love you best, I love you most, I love you high, I love you low, I love you deep, I love you wide, I love you this much. See, and I love that one because it is all about unconditional love. And that piece is so significant. Just unconditional love, just really easy, basic foundation stuff. And that piece, really, really important. And the next one is going to be there it is. Jesus is your friend. He's always with you. How do you talk to Jesus? Does he have a cell phone? How do we do that? I mean, teaching a child to pray, teaching a child that he can pray, she or he can pray anytime, anywhere. Oh my goodness. And you're never alone. And God is with you and you're never alone, no matter how hard things get. I don't know if any of you guys know Alita Slater, who is also an alum. She is an amazing soul. And when I started studying this, she started writing songs that go along with these concepts that we still do at the center. And it's just that very positive reinforcement of these things that are foundational pieces. Now, what's interesting is when we do this, and we sing these songs, a lot of times our university students who are suffering or have some struggle that they're really working through, they just start crying. And why is that? Because this is foundation. This is where, when life gets tough, this is where we go. This is what we need to be reinforcing with the children. And then, oh my goodness, there isn't anything more fun than Christmas and Easter. And that piece is so fun to be able to teach children about Christmas and Easter. Now, if you think about, let's talk about Christmas first. You think about Christmas. It is so commercialized that we have to teach children to be able to see the signs of, or the symbols of Christmas. But we have to be able to point that out to them because the world, it's just too commercial for them to do it if we don't help teach them the symbols. So a star was over the place where Jesus was born. Angels announced the birth of Christ. Bells sounded from the churches to ring for the joy of Christ being born. My favorite symbol, I think, is the wreath. Because it's like God's love. It goes around and around and around and it never ends. And you think about that. You think about telling a child that. Oh, it's beautiful. And then Santa. So what do you do with Santa? That's Christian parents, we've had that debate over and over again. And I'm not going to tell you there's a right or a wrong, but I am going to tell you is to make sure that the focus is always on Christ. And that piece is really important. And I'll be honest, parenthood is extremely humbling. I mean, oh my goodness, it is the most humbling thing I've ever done. And I don't think, it's just humbling. And I remember one Christmas, our daughter was almost 4 at that time. And we were, she was almost 4 and it was maybe 2-3 days before Christmas. And, you know, and I honestly was thinking, oh my gosh, Lord, I'm trying, but this is hard stuff. And he somehow, I think he when we are feeling that, he lets us know that, okay, things may be better than you think. And that's what he did this day for me. But we got out of the car. It was 3 days before Christmas. There was this man and woman, they were arguing, and they were really arguing loud. And I got a little nervous and was trying to get Brittany away from them. And I heard the woman say, just ask somebody, would you? I'm tired of this. Just ask somebody. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to go. And then of course, he comes right up to Brittany, gets down at her level and says, can you tell me, why are we doing all this stuff? What is this all about? She puts her hands on her hips and she says, it's happy birthday, baby Jesus. And he started to cry. The woman started to cry. I started to cry. Brittany had no idea what we were talking about. And that's what it's all about. And so I thought, okay, Lord, thank you. And that's just your little reminder that as parents, sometimes we're doing better than we think. But that's the thing with Christmas. It should be all about happy birthday, baby Jesus. So another symbol is going to be the candy cane, which it's however you look at it, J for Jesus, the shepherd's staff, that piece, J for Jesus. And one of the things that really, really love is the Early Childhood Learning Center at Christmas time. There isn't a better place, in my opinion, than to be. If you can imagine, it's all about happy birthday, baby Jesus. And it's, you know, they look, and this is Emma's class, and she can talk to you about this in a little bit, but look at this. I mean, the nativity, so there's nativity scenes everywhere. There's dramatic play centers. In this particular room, they designed their own manger scene, and you know, and they take turns playing the different roles, but it's all about happy birthday, baby Jesus. And that piece, oh my goodness. One of the stories that we tell when we are telling children or college students about how important it is for children to construct their own knowledge is one that was done at the center a few years ago. And I walked into the center, there was a sweet little girl and little boy, and this little boy looked at me and he said, Mrs. Rogers, what do you think it was like to be Mother Mary? I said, I don't know. Why don't you go and tell me? So what he did was he put on the Mother Mary costume, he put a pillow on his tummy, and he looks at me and he says, I've got the king of the world in my tummy. I'm really happy and proud. Now, he took it off, went off doing something else. The teacher and I obviously were pretty impressed with that comment, and got a little emotional on that one too. But that's what they have to do. We have to give them the tools to answer some of these questions in very concrete ways. Now, symbols of Easter, also important. But what's important is that we focus on, what do we focus on? Now this, if you think about this concrete child that thinks visually, we do talk about the cross, but we don't honestly get into the blood and the guts of it. That Jesus died on the cross, but because he died, you know what? We have new life. It's all about new life. Let's look for new life. We've got Easter lilies and new clothes, and we do Easter bonnet. We make new Easter bonnets and do Easter bonnet parades and flowers, and sometimes hatch chickens. But we focus on the new life, and that piece really, really important. Here's some of the things at Easter time that you can see, the symbols that we just focus on. And one of the things, before I started reading this research and getting into this research, I saw something that was actually very bothersome at Easter time. And I was observing a lesson of a teacher, not a Point Loma Nazarene University teacher, I just want you all to know. And actually, to be honest, we were looking at putting our own daughter in this place, and in this school. It's a very strong Christian school. And so I was observing a lesson, and it was with first graders. It was a first grade lesson. So so she said, okay, I want you to write down every bad thing, every sin you've ever done. What are those bad things you've done? And that part was actually kind of cute because these little children, I mean, I hit my sister, and they're writing all this stuff down and then some of them took a long time to write. And then later she said, okay. And she got a hammer and a wooden, it was just a wooden piece of wood. And she took the hammer and said, Christ's hand has a nail in it, and and she's pounding it. And this is because of your sins, because of all the bad things you did. And I mean, these little children are crying and feeling really bad. And I'm thinking, I am not seeing this. And then we went outside and she had them take all of their sins, and they they dug a hole, put it in the ground, and God forgives our sins and it's all right. And, and I remember, and I hadn't read anything about Fowler, but I kept on thinking, okay, our daughter is not going there. And that is not developmentally appropriate by any stretch. But you think about that. Now, so this person was very well-meaning. Now, maybe developmentally, there's another part of life, I'm not sure when, but we do have to realize that, that the reason he died, but you think about it, how we do it, and developmentally, because I wonder if those children have a lot of guilt and all kinds of stuff. So those pieces, really important, how we present these foundation pieces. So as I said, we are, I've got Emma Ossing here, who's the site director. I am the academic director of the Early Childhood Learning Center. We are a center that is a Christ center, all about hopefully giving children healthy seeds of faith that they will be able to carry throughout their life. That's our mission. And we are, I've seen that place even bring families to Christ. So it is his place, a really, I think, amazing place. So, so this is probably a great time for questions. And Emma, please join me. And I am going to stop sharing and the screen. And Kimberly, do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Susan. That was lovely. I learned so much. If you have questions, please go ahead and type those into the chat box. And we would love to hear from Emma and Susan, some expert tips on your questions. Susan, I particularly loved those symbols around Christmas and Easter. That was helpful. Thank you. I love it. We have one really great question already came in. It's how do you help children who come to the center who already have some of these maybe bad faith habits? So you just shared that great story of the teacher who was emphasizing, perhaps a different way of viewing the cross. How would you help correct these?
Do you want to take that one, Emma?
Well, that's a hard one. Without a specific example, I would, you never tell a child you're wrong. You say, wow, that's really interesting. I would like to hear more about that. And you listen and you listen and you give them some more concrete pieces that might go with that. But I always share it with the parents because, children, they may not have learned that from their parent. They may perceive that they may have figured that out on their own, whatever it might be. So I always share with parents, hey, they told me this today, and this is how I responded. Please let me know if there's some, another way we can approach this. I always involve the parents because it's their child and they need to be a part of that conversation. So that's how I do those things. Maybe the parent doesn't know either. Maybe my sharing helps the parent go, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Maybe they go look into something a little bit deeper and more. Maybe I learned something from them. So I always involve the parents when it comes to those difficult questions with the children. There was another one about adults.
Yes. So then thinking about adult children or older children who perhaps don't believe, what are some first steps towards instilling faith in older children or in your adult children?
I think that's a really good question. And I think I think they're watching us, probably even more than they're listening to us. And I think that piece, and I know, I mean, personally from a mother's perspective, that, you know, my children have said, Mom, I saw how you handled that. You leaned in, didn't you? You know, and I'm like, wait, yeah, I guess I did. But that piece, I mean, living it. So it's one thing for us to talk about it, but to live it and I think with our children, when there's mistakes, I think it's really important to tell them, I mean, early on, but continuing, you know what, I didn't handle that one right. And, you know, so I think that modeling, and I think that when they see you live a life that is a little different, that speaks volumes. So I think that consistency, and we shouldn't say something and then do the opposite, because boy, that's gonna really be, but the faith piece is really a process. So we've got to let, especially that 20-year-old mind, one of the things that 20-year-old mind is really, they need to, you know, it's funny because, you know, because the question is, well, if they don't believe, well, maybe they're looking at it totally different. Maybe they have believed for a while, but now they're looking at it, and listen to those questions and help them research it. But do what Emma said. Don't ever say, no, that's wrong. Let's look. And I personally kind of like this Socratic method. So ask them a question and well, so why are you thinking that? And let them process. And then they say that. So why do you say that? You know, so where could we find that answer? What do you think? And then you're just scaffolding the questioning, and you're helping them process, because that process, we can't fix it. We've got to let them go through that piece to come to who they are on their own.
That's beautiful. Thank you. This is a hard question, and it's something that I was thinking about as well. Deanna asked, my own son, who's 7 years old, has recently been asking why God would make a pandemic. How do you struggle through those questions with your children in presenting? Why do bad things happen? Any suggestions on that?
Well, not that we should steal Amy, which is the mother of Bailey, but I think what she said to Bailey was very insightful. You know, I don't have all the answers, but there's certain things that I do know. And I know that God is with us. I know he hears our prayers. I know he's not going to leave us alone in this, that he's with us. And that piece, I think it, you know, I think is significant. I think that steady, unconditional love, that we can go to him and that we don't have all the answers. And, you know, and people do things too. So it's not all God's fault, but.
That's helpful. Thank you. Deanna also asked if we could perhaps get those book titles. So I will get those book titles from Susan and I will email them to everyone.
Well, you know what? I've got it right here.
Great.
Let me do it right here. So this is what you're going to do. So if you can see that, just email the center and they will send. They'll give you. Vonda Rodehaver is kindly offered to send out this to everybody. So it'll be the book titles and the basic concepts that we're going to focus on. That we focus on.
Great, thank you. So that's eclc@pointloma.edu. Email that address and you'll get sent a book list. And this recording will also be made available on the PLNU homecoming website by tomorrow. So please visit pointloma.edu/homecoming within the next couple of days and you can find a recording of this session, along with also some upcoming Loma talks that we would love to have you tune in with as well. I think that wraps up our time tonight. I learned so much and felt that this was a very valuable conversation. It's fun to see some alumni and then also some parents of the ECLC Thank you, Susan, so much.
Too. Yeah.
And students, what an amazing place to learn how to be an educator. Thank you, Susan, for your leadership. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate you being with us tonight, everyone. Please have a restful evening, and we'll see you back online for more Homecoming at Home events. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Susan. Thanks, Emma.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Sue. Have fun.
Hi, Miss Saucy. Hazel wants to say hi.
Oh, look, there's Hazel.
Hi, Hazel.
Oh, look at her. Hazel.
Nice to see you.